But tonight, we're going to be talking about Google Analytics 4 and Tag Manager and seeing what sort of stuff we can track with that. Okay, so hi everyone. If you don't know who I am, I'm Will, and I've been a WordPress developer for many, many years. Quick show of hands, who here misses Universal Analytics? I do. It was great. You know, Universal Analytics, it was easy, it was simple. There was a few metrics that you could track. It's all about page track and things, and it was just easy to see where things were. So I do miss the good old days of Universal Analytics. But this session here, simply in English. I'm going to try and avoid jargon. No deep dive of coding. I don't think I've even got one code snippet anywhere, which is fantastic. But just what you need to do to get tracking with Google Analytics and Tag Manager in WordPress. Here's me. If you want to connect with me, I'm mostly on LinkedIn these days. Some personal stuff on Instagram, a little bit on Twitter as well. I span across 4 different websites. I've got my willbrown.com. That's where I offer courses for WordPress developers and freelancers. My main consultancy is ZeroPointDevelopment.com. I've got WP Wingman, which is WordPress self-managed care, like site care. And I've got WOS, which is the Website Owner's Survival Guide. And so you can have a look at those websites as well. But yeah, definitely contact me. Probably best connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay, so today I'm talking about starting off with making sense of Google Analytics 4. What it does out of the box, what it doesn't do. Then I'll show you some metrics that actually matter to business owners versus the kind of vanity numbers that a lot of people get caught up with. Next, we'll have a look at Tag Manager, why you'd even bother. I know some people don't even know what it is or understand what it can do. I'll walk through a practical demo of tracking a form submission. And finally, if time allows, hopefully it will, I'll share a few bonus tips, including some WooCommerce tracking ideas. So Google Analytics 4, so the analytics itself, it helps you understand if your website is working. And what I mean with working is without tracking, you're basically guessing where leads are coming from. You're kind of going blind at all. I've worked with a lot of small business owners that don't have Google Analytics at all or haven't had for years on their website. And you know, I don't understand how they can track conversions and how they know exactly what's working if nothing's being tracked. So Google Analytics 4 or GA4, as it's broken down into, is very different from Universal Analytics, but you can still measure the key things like conversions, engagement, content performance, and that sort of stuff. It's just a little bit more complicated to find out where those things are. So why tracking still matters? Again, as I said, a lot of companies, a lot of small businesses, maybe freelancers, tradies, people like that, they don't really, when they create a website, they don't really understand, you know, what tool that is, what business tool the website is. It's only, you know, once they, maybe a year or 2 years after, and they really seriously start to grow the business and understand, you know, expand the website, but then they haven't installed Google Analytics and they don't know what exactly is going on. They can't measure anything. So tracking still matters nowadays, even more, I think, with such an amount of people on the web. You know, it's very difficult to find a niche nowadays. You're usually competing with a lot of people online. And without tracking, you're basically just guessing where your leads are coming from. And as a business owner, you really want to know where your leads are coming from and try and improve that so you can increase those conversions, get more people and more sales, more eyes looking at your website. So GA4 is different from Universal Analytics, but again, you know, we're going to have a look, see how we can install it, see what the basic things are that we can track with it. So what does it actually track by default? It records basic interactions, so page views, sessions, scrolls, and outbound clicks. That's kind of default reporting. If you're looking at it, that's sort of metrics that are going to come back within GA4. A lot of people on Universal Analytics like to track bounce rate. Bounce rate was a big thing for about 10 years. So bounce rate is the percentage of people that just, you know, hit your web page and within a few seconds they're out of there, you know, because there's nothing there relevant for them. GA4 kind of turns on its head, and they've got something called engagement rate, and that's replacing the bounce rate. It's more useful because it actually measures the time on page and whether users are actually doing something, which is what we want to track, not just if they're leaving. Engagement rate, it's defined as a session lasting over 10 seconds or having 2 or more page screen views. That's you flipping between, somewhere you've been led down the path somewhere, or triggering a key event. So conversions have been renamed, or goals have been renamed to key events in GA4. If you're still after bounce rate and look, if your boss wants it or a client wants it, then it's your job to deliver that. If they're still after bounce rate, you can work out, or you can tell them how to work it out. The formula is very easy. It's bounce rate equals 100% minus engagement rate, which is a percentage. There is a bounce rate metric in GA4, but it's not displayed by default. You have to go around and dig to find it and then add it to one of the screens or one of the reports. So it is there. Google didn't have it initially when GA4 was released, but they kind of relented to the storm of people saying, where's my bounce rate? So they have added in as a metric that's kind of buried away down a few levels. So there's heaps of tutorials online that shows you how to get the bounce rate back and add it onto one of the screens. So I'm not going to cover that here tonight. So that's what GA4 tracks. What it doesn't track is things like, useful things like form submissions, file downloads, newsletter signups, all the kind of good stuff that as a business owner or your client really wants to measure those conversions. So you need to add those, and I'll show you one example of that in a bit. So when you're in Google Analytics, not every metric is useful. Business owners often get a bit stuck looking at vanity numbers like page views. Vanity metrics, they're ones that look good in a report to a manager, but don't really tell you if your business is growing or performing or what people are doing on the website. So for example, page views doesn't really matter, how many page views. What matters is anyone filling out the form on that page. That's what you want to track. Another one is social shares. You can get 1 million likes, and it can go absolutely viral, and you'll have not one conversion from that. So, it's nice things to have, and they look pretty, and they're probably good in a report, but they're not really meaningful, valuable metrics for a business website to measure. So if you get caught in that, try and kind of, move the client, move yourself away from that. Yes, they're nice to have, but we want some really good value metrics that we're measuring. So the value metrics, instead of focusing on outcomes, so you want to focus on outcomes rather than those vanity metrics. Did people contact you? Did they buy something? Did they sign up for your newsletter? That's what it's all about. You want people on your email form. You want people to purchase stuff. You want people to contact you or pick up the phone, for a prospect, a lead. The value metrics, they connect directly to those business outcomes. Things like leads, sales, conversions, that all sort of good stuff. So your leads. So for that metric, you're looking for form fills and signups. So you might have lots of offers that pitched at your niche. You want to make sure that those forms are being filled and you're getting some of those details back for those. So that's a good thing to track in analytics. Sales and purchases, of course, if you can put that onto Google Analytics, you can track not only just the direct sales and purchases, patterns as well. So you can see what's seasonal, or what marketing campaigns or ads that you've pushed that have really worked, that hit your niche, your target audience. Content engagement, so what pages, what blogs, what resources are people actually looking at and using, and how long are they staying on that page. Again, you might find that some of your weirder blogs are some of the most engaging. Certainly some of my older blogs that I just put up there are probably one of the best engagement stuff. It's not necessarily aligned to my niche, but some of those older blog posts still get really, really good engagement. So I'm always going back, looking at that, seeing which ones are engaging, tweaking them a little bit, maybe a bit of a call to action, on those pages to push people, down that kind of sales funnel. Traffic sources as well. You really need to know where customers are coming from. Is it from your ads? Is it from social? Is it from Google organic searches? All these sort of good things. So, as a business owner, you need to know where your people are consuming your content, and you can't really do that if you're running blind with no analytics. Other things as well, user journeys. So you can spot where people are dropping off in the conversion. So if you've got particular landing pages, they're acting as sales pages, then you really want to see where people are coming in the funnel and where they're dropping out, so you can improve that, so you can tweak that, and make sure that they're spending more engagement time in that funnel and then passing on to the next level. So user journeys are really, really important. I did a whole talk about customer ideal client avatars as well. So if you don't have any of those, that's really your target audience. If you were to put something in front of your ideal customer that they would purchase, that's the kind of thing that you really should be developing, have an avatar for your ideal client. And then you can create content and funnels for them that's going to entice them. So it's really, really important to understand how users are coming in and out of that workflow of your website. And other things, just quickly, cost per lead, cost per sale. It helps you know your marketing spend is profitable. If you're spending $100 on an ad, it does nothing, and you spend $50 on an ad, and it goes viral. Well, you kind of need to know that, so you can cut spending here and put spending, where it's actually matter. Returning visitors as well. Loyalty and trust is important, and it's as important as backlinks. So if you're trying to grow a brand, grow a target audience, grow your authority, you kind of need to know who's returning or what sort of things people are returning for, because that's why they're coming back to your website. So they want lots of that, they like that, so produce more of that. So that's the kind of value metrics that you should be tracking, not the vanity clicks and likes and stuff, but the really important business stuff that's going to get you leads, it's going to get you money, it's going to get you authority for that. Some common GA4 misconceptions. So some people think you just install it or add the tracking code, install a plugin and just leave it and it works out the box. It doesn't really. As I say, it tracks things like page views and sessions, which in itself, might be all right to tell you what your top page content is, but it's not really useful business information. It's not telling you what people are doing with your website. So if you just install it and let it run, it's generating some analytics, but it's not really generating value or useful analytics for your business website. Myth 2, I get all the time, is GA4 is only for big companies, but that's actually really inaccurate. Freelancers and small business owners probably get more out of it. So if you think of the big companies, they usually have sales teams, marketing teams, and they're looking after those metrics themselves. They've got campaigns going on. They might use GA4 to get some of that, but in general, that's their job. It's all around those metrics to try and boost sales and marketing. But for freelancers, us solo people, small businesses with maybe 1, 2, 3, 5 people in it, they're the ones that are going to get the most out of the Google Analytics data. If they're, marking those conversions, having a look at, all those value tracking metrics, they're going to get more out of it. So I actually think GA4 is not only for big companies, it's more for the smaller businesses and freelancers. Myth 3 is that when you install Google Analytics 4, you lose everything from Universal Analytics. Well, kind of true. Conversions and events still exist, but they're just structured differently. GA4 is more complex, it's more for the seasoned marketer, but this stuff is still there. It's still there in there. But if you haven't converted from Universal Analytics, and I've come up with a few companies who haven't, I didn't understand it was being decommissioned, then that means your website hasn't been collecting any visitor data for over a year. So it's time to fix that right now. I had a client come to me and they had visited their Google Analytics and they hadn't been there in 3 or 4 years. And they came to me to say, oh, there's a problem, that my website's not collecting any data. I just see like a line. I'm like, yeah, it's because Universal Analytics was, decommissioned a couple of years ago. They're like, what? Where's all that data? Gone. So, so got them on Google Analytics 4, did a little training session with them, set some of the value goals, and they're happier now. Of course, we've got some data to track. Okay, so installing GA4, some people getting a bit of a panic because if you Google how to install Google Analytics on WordPress website, the first things that come back is usually code snippets. And when you throw a code snippet in front of somebody who's not a developer, they go, and then you've got to put this code after the header and this code before the footer, and people just go, what? So let's not do any of that. There's an easier way to set up Google Analytics. It's called Google Sitekit. Yes, there's lots of plugins out there, and yes, they probably work. But this one is the best one that I've used for clients who are non-technical, who just want to get up and running. So it's called Google Sitekit. You can download from the WordPress.org repository, or sitekit.withgoogle.com is the URL, and you can download the plugin from there as a zip file and install it. It is super easy. Here's the dashboard. So you set it up, you install it, you activate it, you visit it, and you get this dashboard. So rather than paste in your Google Analytics code, which is like a GA dash code of numbers and letters, or deal with code snippets, all you do is you click on the button, it'll take you to Google, you sign in with the Google account if you want, or the one that you've set up with Google Analytics 4, and then that's it, it connects it with your website. So it uses something called OAuth, which is an authentication protocol. It's a lot easier, it's a lot secure than pasting in code snippets or tracking codes. So it's all do, you click on it, authenticate, put in your Google password account that you've set up for Google Analytics, and that's it. It adds the code in for you, not just for Google Analytics, but also for Google Tag Manager as well. So it's 2 or 3 steps. That's it done. The only, maybe I say drawback, not really drawback, the only thing if you're installing with client site is that they have to do that unless you've got the Google login to their account. So I had a client that just finished, delivered the website, and I basically walked them through. Is it a video or on Zoom? I sent them a pre-video, but they want to do it on Zoom. I just stepped them through and said, go here, click on that button, don't click on the bottom button because it tracks your data. And then I watched them, it came up with Google. Do you want to sign to Google? Yes, put your account, that one, put in your password, done. That was it. So easy as. It does come with a dashboard in WordPress. I think that's pretty irrelevant. It comes out with a few things. So key metrics, it's got traffic, it's got content. There's what else is there as well? Speed as well. But it's not great. It's just an overview. It's a snapshot. So I would avoid using the data on that dashboard in favor of actually going into Google Analytics and having a look at the data in there. So once you are in Google Analytics, then you want to set up events for those. I'll show you how to set up one in a minute. But it's all about tracking events. So you want to be able to go into your Google Analytics, see what events are there, and be able to see when people clicked on them and what page they clicked them from. To be able to see your events, then you have to go into the admin, you go to Data Display and Events, and click on the Recent Events tab, and that's where you can find all the events. And you'll need that to be able to set them up, because you need to set them as what's called key events or goals or conversions. That's when they're marked on the normal report page. So easiest way to do that, you can see the little GIF playing there. You go into Data Display, then Events. There's a little tab called Recent Events, and you star something, and that makes it a key event or a conversion or a goal in the old Universal Analytics language. So really easy to do. Okay, let's switch gears to Google Tag Manager. Tag Manager is basically a central hub for all your tracking codes. So instead of adding scripts and JavaScript everywhere to lots of buttons, you basically just go into Google Tag Manager, and there's a whole set of conditions that allow you to target buttons and pages and things like that. So it's really easier. You don't have to do any code at all. It's really useful for tracking advanced stuff like button clicks, video plays, form abandonments. But if you don't know what you're doing, it is easy to kind of get muddled and break things up. But we're going to keep it simple tonight. So I would recommend that you install Google Analytics 4, get that property set up, go into Google Tag Manager as well, and use that to track all your business goals. It's a lot easier than having to deal with scripts and JavaScript and put things on buttons and stuff. If you don't want the simplicity of Google Tag Manager and you kind of know your way around events and you want more control, more power, then for beginners, Sitekit's probably, or Tag Manager can be, a little bit too simple. There is another plugin that you can use. I don't recommend this for beginners, but certainly for more advanced people, and it's called Google Tag Manager for WordPress. It's GTM with a number 4 and WP. And it gives you a whole heap of extra events that you can track, especially for WooCommerce. So if you've got e-commerce, this is probably, you can still do it in Google Tag Manager, but if you want to do it directly from WordPress, kind of push the stuff from WordPress to Google, it's another option. But be warned, when you go into GTM for WP, you are hit with a wall of checkboxes and tabs. So there's kind of an overwhelm of everything that you can track. So I like Google Tag Manager. I like going in there. I like being able to set up stuff with that. If you're familiar with how Google Tag Manager works, or if you start off with the basic stuff and then do a little bit of tutorials, videos online, you can do everything in Google Tag Manager, and you can find out all this stuff. I just find it easier for that one interface. I think that GTM for WP is really powerful, but I think it's just kind of overwhelmed. People just get, blindsided with checkboxes. But is that another option? When you are setting up Google Tag Manager, when you're testing out the events, use preview debug mode in Google Analytics 4, and use the preview in Google Tag Manager as well as a kind of a debug mode that comes up and it sets a fake container with your website in there, and you can click on the buttons that you want to track, and in real time it will show you whether or not Google Tag Manager is firing, if it's recognizing them. And then you can go into Google Analytics 4 in debug mode, and you can see that event come through, and you can see it in that list of recent events for those. So when you're doing a little bit of testing, make sure you've got those kind of preview things set up so you can do real time. Don't just rely on your setting up all the bits, and then publish it and you think it's working. Go in debug mode, go in preview mode, and just click on things and make sure that data is being sent out. It's super easy to do. So what sort of things can we track? Tracking form submissions is probably the easiest thing to talk about, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. It's the one thing that even a small business owner, a tradie, for example, is going to want to track. The very simplest business website is going to have a contact form, so you want to be tracking, the clicks for those and how often they're doing and where they're coming from. So I'm going to look at that in detail next, but you can do other things. So the top one here, this is like the same Google Tag Manager desktop workspace, but I've done two snapshots. So the first one is showing tags. So the one that's here is for form submission, and then so the tags are what we're looking at, and the triggers are what it sends to Google Analytics 4. So we have a look at tags, and then the tags will be triggered on something. So triggers, we can do things like phone links, email buttons, or special call to actions. So for example, in the one below, we've got, you can track things like, if you have a button that says with your telephone number, then the link is tel:// and the telephone number. You can track that by the tel in the URL. Same with if you've got mail links like mail to, then you can track those things as well. So Google Tag Manager, very flexible. We've got these triggers that it's looking for all these times. And then once it hits a trigger, we can assign a tag to that, and that does something. It tags it in Google Analytics 4. So here's one of the form submissions. So here we've got the tag. Probably doing it the other way around. Should do it the other way around, but what this is doing here is it's the tag type is Google Analytics. It's an event, so we want to track an event. We want to push an event up to Google Analytics 4. The measurement ID is just the Google Analytics ID number. We're going to give the event a name. So this is what I'm using for a form submission. So I want to push the event name contact_form_submit into Google Analytics. So when I look at the reports, I can see that, in the month for the 30 days or the 90 days. So I'll be looking for this contact form. So this is very basic. Again, if you've got one contact form, if it's a tradie or something, it's all right to put contact form submit. When you've got bigger websites, got lots of offers or tracks, you want to start putting something very specific, like the offer name or the contact form ID, just so you're tracking, you know exactly which contact form that you're using. So that's the tag. That's what Tag Manager sends to Google Analytics. So when you look at the report, you see little contact form submit, and you know exactly where and when people are clicking on that. Here's the trigger. So in this case, I have a form submission, and when somebody completes the form, I send them to a thank you page. And what we can do with Google Tag Manager is we can create a trigger that looks for that particular URL. So in this one here, the trigger type is page view. So whenever somebody views that thank you page, and then we've got a condition. So the page path, which is the URL, starts with /thank-you, thank-you-contact-form. And that's the URL of my thank you form, or a thank you form. Now you don't need to put in the full domain path. It kind of assumes that. So that / would be the first thing. So for example, my website is zeropointdevelopment.com / and then thank-you-contact-form. That'd be the full URL. So you take the first / and that bit, and that's what it starts with. And it kind of starts with, ends with, begins with, contains, doesn't contain. You can use regex as well. So it's very, very flexible. But this here, this trigger, every time someone views on my page that URL, that thank you page, then this Google Tag Manager triggers this. And you can see what happens when it triggers. It uses that tag, which then submits that, that key event to Google Analytics 4, so it comes up in the reporting. So tools and plugins are going to help you do this. SiteKit, I think, is the easiest. It's free. It connects Google Analytics 4 and Google Tag Manager. You've got the, that should be number 4 there, GTM4 WP. It's more flexible. It's got lots of different events. Got more events you can shake a stick at, especially with WooCommerce, but it's very difficult. It's very in your face. Lots of options, not a lot of documentation. Forms as well. So I did a simple example there. So when I got Gravity Forms, and when that contact form is submitted, it then redirects to a thank you page. Now, when you're using these forms like Gravity Forms, Fluent Forms, Contact Form 7, most of them use Ajax. So when you fill it in, you get a little circle thing, and then it kind of puts the stuff back in the browser without a refresh. Those are more difficult to track. They can be tracked, but you know it's doing some server stuff underneath the hood. So it's more difficult to track, and it kind of requires code snippets. So that's why I like to use the redirection method. Not only is it a little bit more personal, I'll show you that in a second, but it doesn't involve any code snippets. But it can be done. I'm not going to cover the code snippet stuff here. But you know, I use Gravity Forms, and by default, it's Ajax requests. So it just sends stuff in the back end and refreshes. You know, that's no good if you're trying to do a client website and they don't understand, you know, all these code snippets to do. You just keep it nice and simple. Just do a redirect to a thank you page, and it's really, really simple. Tag Assistant as well, and GA4 debug views. Those are within those tools, and use those when you're testing, just to make sure you know Tag Manager is getting the trigger and that Google Analytics is listening for that key event. Okay, so here's a flow. That's what I was talking about. So the easy workflow, and we're still talking about form submission. So user submits a form, it then redirects to a thank you page on a separate URL. Use Google Tag Manager to capture that URL using that trigger. So you're looking for that specific URL path and make sure it's unique. Then Google Tag Manager is telling Google Analytics 4 to mark that as a particular key event, a goal, a conversion for that, so you can see it within the Google Analytics reports. Again, the more advanced workflow, and this requires code, is user submits a form, the plugin fires an event, which is a background Ajax event, and then you've got some code, and then Google Analytics records that, and you can mark it as a key event. So a little more complex, requires code, but we kind of did the top one, which is a lot easier. Okay, so let's run through a practical example. Easy workflows: redirect to a thank you page, create a GTM trigger for that page, send an event to Google Analytics 4, mark that as a GA4 conversion. So here's your step one. You want to redirect to a thank you page within your form, and make sure you've got a unique URL for that. That's the easy way to do it. Step two is you go into Google Tag Manager, you create a trigger for that page. We saw that, trigger on the URL. So, you know, thank you, contact, whatever it's called, and then get that. Oh, it should be step three. is it sends an event to Google Analytics 4 within Tag Manager, and then step 4, you mark it as a conversion. So again, the same process we've talked about, but just in a kind of easy workflow. This is one of my thank you forms. I like to keep them personal. I think this is why the redirect works really, really well. If you've got the Ajax stuff, it kind of refreshes the same page. It usually puts a little output box somewhere down the bottom, maybe. It might even come below the fold and your user won't even see it. And it just says, form submitted. That's a bit panicked. So I like to do a little more personal when people are submitting forms. So what I do is I redirect to a thank you page, but I capture the first name that somebody puts into the submission form, and I pass that as a parameter to the thank you page URL, which I use Elementor mostly. I can grab in as a query and then redirect that onto the web page. So it comes up with a first name, basically. So it's a little bit personal. I think it's nice to have a personal touch for those. Just, you know, rather than the default spinny wheel that just says submitted. It's not, I don't know if that's very nice. So I have lots of these thank you pages. I have lots of different graphics to make it a little bit fun with different information for those. But I just think it makes a little bit more personal touch to those. So how do you view conversions in GA4? There's several ways, several areas. So once you've got all this set up, you're looking for that key event that you named. So contact form submission. And those, how do you find those? The main place you're going to go to or tell your client to go to is reports. So go into the Google Analytics 4, go into reports, then go into engagement, and then events. And if you've marked it as a key event, you'll see a column that says events with a little arrow. Click on the arrow, it'll come up with all those key events. You can just click on that, and it'll tell you within that context what page they're coming from, how many clicks, how often it's being clicked from. So another way as well is through the acquisition. So you can go into acquisition, and there's user acquisition and traffic acquisition. Again, there's a column that says events. You click on the little down arrow and then click on the specific key event that you want, and it'll tell you within context where that's come from. So if you're on a particular page, then you can see where that key event has come from, and then you can work your way back to see where they came from or where they went to next, things like that. There is an exploration. It's new to Google Analytics 4. So that's the third icon down. You get the home, you get the little report, and then you get the kind of squiggy arrow that points up to the top right. It's called Explorations, and it's like a blank canvas. So you can drag as many metrics on as you want. So you can build up your own custom report, basically. So if you wanted a report that just showed you form submissions over time, and maybe the page before it came from, or where it came from, like the source, you could build one like that. So for yourself or either for your client. So explorations, they're a bit more complicated to set up. Again, there's lots of tutorials. It's kind of out of the context of this tonight, but it's good to know that they are there. When you're setting up the key events, so when you're in Tag Manager and you're testing to make sure that stuff's coming through, the place to go is in the admin. So that's a little settings cog at the bottom left. Click on that. Into admin, you go into data display and then events, and then use that tab that says recent events, and you'll be able to see all the events that you've been testing, so you can mark them as key events. So those are all the places in Google Analytics 4 that you can view your events, but mostly you'll probably go into reports, engagement, and events. Okay, so bonus tips for e-commerce. If anyone's running WooCommerce, maybe not just WooCommerce, it might be any sort of checkout, just easy digital checkouts. You could have a membership site, with some sort of checkout system in there. Most of them will work okay with Google Analytics 4 and Google Tag Manager. The sort of things that you're looking to track is things like add to cart. So how many people are adding that stuff to cart, when the checkout started. So you can add a little key event for that. So when the person adds the first stuff to checkout, you can actually start to measure how long they've got that stuff left in the cart, see where else they're visiting, or measure how often adding stuff to the cart. So lots of metrics you can track. Purchases, of course, but even things like coupons, refunds, you can track those sort of things as well. So heaps of metrics that you can check with any sort of e-commerce platform. Yeah, so with this data, it's going to help you see not just what's selling, but why things are working and why things are not, what people are doing, on the website, how often coupons are being used, things like that. So it's really useful information. If you are running some sort of e-commerce and you want me to do a dedicated entire session just on tracking measurements, please let me know. Send me a DM, send me a connection request, just see a quit like that on specific WooCommerce or e-commerce, and I can do another session on that. I'm happy to do that. I have been working on, I kind of run out of time, I have been working on a GA4 and GTM quick start guide for WordPress. So it goes through all the steps, full screenshots and things, step by step of setting them up. More stuff here I could do here. I'm obviously trying to stick to time, so there's only so much I can do tonight online. But I've got it all in a guide I'm going to be sharing with my newsletter subscription audience, probably in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks. I'll send one out. So if you're interested, subscribe to my newsletter. So it's a newsletter only thing I'll be sending out. There's a QR code that'll take you to that URL as well. What time is it? Okay, 1:45. So that's 45 minutes, getting pretty good in time. So let's wind up. Some key takeaways. Google Analytics 4, it's not the scary beast that everyone thinks it is. It's complicated and it can be complicated. But what you want to make sure is that you start with what matters. Measure those value goals on your website, your client's website. Start simple, just get to know the interfaces, track the metrics that you need. And it's not going to be overwhelming if you focus on what matters. Use Google Sidekick for a really quick setup. We need more advanced tracking. Sure, you bring Google Tag Manager or use an extra plugin, but Google Sidekick is a really, really quick setup. Nice, easy for yourself and for clients to understand. Track outcomes, not just page views. So don't just track likes and how many times a page has been viewed. That's kind of helpful, I guess, in some, but you want to track outcomes. So what's important in your business website? It's your landing pages, it's your conversions, it's your sales funnel. And mark these as key events, which is now conversions, which used to be goals. So you want to make sure that you're getting those onto your Google Analytics reports when you're viewing them to see where people are clicking on. And most importantly, start really simple. Identify 1 or 2 value goals that you want to track, and just get used to those tools. Where to look in Google Analytics for, how to tag them with Google Tag Manager, and it's not as scary as people think. Clients manage to take it up really, really quickly, understand the basics, and before long they're tracking lots of different landing pages, lots of different thank you pages, and they're getting that real metric that matters. Okay, that's it for tonight. If you've got any questions, please come on camera and ask me, or drop them in the comments. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I've just got a question in the chat. Have you ever worked in site? Can you clone to a staging site to set up and configure and debug and then push production without change? No, you can't do that. I understand what you're talking about, but no, you need to go and redo all the URLs and stuff. And when you're creating your Google Analytics property, it's based on that particular URL. So it's looking at that URL only. So if you've got a staging site, it's got a different URL. So that's not going to work. So you can't clone a staging site, set up all the analytics, and then easily convert them all over again. So that's something that you really need to do on the live site. Great question. How to sign up to my newsletter? I've got the link here. So I think that's it. Off the top of my head, I'll go back to see. Oh no, it's newsletter subscription. Brown.com/. Oh, that should be an S. You know what I mean? Easy as. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi Will. Firstly, thank you for the session today. Yeah. The link which I had shared earlier, the GA4, where you build the URL and the events, right? So can the same thing be achieved on the tag manager also, like, or is this going to be a separate one where I need to generate
Okay,
the URLs here and then add it to my events?
absolutely. Yeah, that's a great resource. Thank you for that. Grace, you got anything?
Oh, yes. I'm just wondering if you have any, I guess, sort of like tips and tricks or like common things to look out for, common mistakes people make when making the tags and the triggers and why it might not be feeding through. Like, what are some things to look out for that are easy mistakes?
Yeah, so easy mistakes are using, if you've got multiple things, is using a really simple name. Like, for example, contact form submission, and you've got 500 contact forms. You need to just have a think about how you're going to naming conventions. Really important because you want your marketing team yourself to go and be able to easily figure out which one is which. Same things with newsletters. If you're pushing out a newsletter every week or every couple of weeks, put the ID of the newsletter in there, or the week or the date, so that you can track it rather than it just says newsletter. You're like, okay, well, which newsletter was that? So again, just think about naming conventions and how you can link that with the specific versions or numbers that are going out. Another thing that commonly people deal with is the way that the tag manager is set up. You'll see there's lots of options on how to find something. Like that one there was page URL, but there's also page request, there's page referrer. So kind of knowing which metric in Google Tag Manager to set up or to use to track what you're trying to look at. Yeah, there's lots of tutorials out there for common Google Tag Manager tags to use. Yeah, so I just stick with a few of them at first, and just get used to the system. But when you're setting these up, you want to use the Google Tag Manager preview button. So again, and it'll ask you for the URL of your website. You put that in, it'll have a little container, and then you want to navigate within that container to what you're trying to set up. So if it's a contact form, you've got the contact form there. Fill it out and press submit, and then look at the tag manager preview window. It'll tell you whether that tag is firing. If it's not, then don't just save it. If it's not, then you have to go back and figure out which trigger you're doing. And similarly, when you've completed that form submission and you're looking at it, yes, it's been tagged, you need to go into Google Analytics debug mode and then make sure that the trigger's been firing and the tag has been sent to Google Analytics. So when you're setting it up, you've got those two, debug and preview mode, and just make sure the flow is working. So a lot of people will go in and they'll just set them up and they'll publish, and and then they'll assume it's working, but they might have got maybe the page URL wrong. They might put like a little slash on the end that some browsers don't. So just make sure that whole flow is working. And then I think most importantly, and this is the one that usually catches people, when you set up all your stuff in Google Tag Manager, you need to publish it, okay, before it works. I had a client who sat there for hours and they're putting all these landing page URLs and button clicks and stuff, and it was fantastic and it was all working, but they forgot to publish that. So it was just sitting there in draft mode and they didn't notice for a few weeks, so they lost all that good data, and they were running ads, video ads and campaigns, and they missed out all that stuff. Like, why is it not coming through? So I logged in and it was all sitting in this draft mode. I'm like, dude. So those are some common gotchas.
In that instance, would that have been showing up when they went to test the tag manager in debug mode, but not showing up in Google Analytics in admin?
That's right. So they went through the workflow.
Yeah.
In the preview, they submitted stuff and they visited the URLs and they could see it was all coming through, and that was great. And then they shut down the system and didn't publish the new updates. It's a workspace. I think it's called a workspace or a workflow. You've got to publish all the new stuff after you've added them in.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Will.
No worries. Any other questions? Feedback stuff? No, all good. Well, I think I've kept you here long enough. It's almost 7 o'clock. Time for my dinner, certainly. Yeah, so thank you very much for coming along. It's nice to see you, Killian. Hopefully we can meet up for some beers soon. That'd be good. Get you around Sydney.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, everyone. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you.
I'll publish these to the meetup page, and yeah, take care. Have a good rest of August, and see you in September.